Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a US versus UK book covers for the first half of 2023. So looking at some new releases and deciding which covers I prefer and which editions I potentially might buy. So we will just dive straight in. I have 10 book releases and let's just see which side of the Atlantic did better in 2023 with their covers for new releases. Starting in publication day on the 3rd of January, Song of Silver Flame Like Night came out by Emily Wen Zhao. Yeah, this is the start of the Song of Last Kingdom series. In a fallen kingdom which has been conquered, we follow two main characters. One girl carries the key to discovering the secrets of her nation's past and unleashing the demons that sleep at its heart. An epic fantasy series inspired by the mythology and folklore of ancient China. So now looking at the covers. This is a tricky one. This, I would say, is definitely a tricky one. I mean, I have not read the book, so I cannot comment on the accuracy of the covers, although they both seem to have gone for a similar theme with a dragon on both covers and this blue colour palette. I mean, I love the colour blue personally. If you knew me growing up, as a kid, I literally wore a lot of blue. It was my favourite colour to wear. The amount of blue tops I owned was probably a little bit ridiculous. So I do really like both of them. I think they both have an excellent colour palette. I feel like it's a bit of a tie. I think I'm going to go for the US. I'll probably buy the UK version because that's going to be the most easily accessible one for me to get here in the UK. But I think for the winner, I will pick the US, just because I prefer, I think, the typography. I like having the title in the blue as opposed to the white. The white looks a little bit stark. That's on the UK cover. I do really like the different colours for the animals on the UK cover. I mean, they're both very pretty, but I think I'll go for the US, although it's a close call, very close call. Next, on the 10th of January, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This one I have read and really thoroughly loved. And we're following Emily Wilde, and she is the leading researcher in fairies. She goes to a remote Scandinavian island to research the fairies there with her academic rival Wendell Bamblebee, and she's following them and their snarky banter as they investigate the fairies on that island. It is very cozy and light academia, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. So deciding on the covers though. Okay, so these are very different vibes. I know with the first one, they both went for the blue aesthetic. These have quite different aesthetics, with the UK cover going for a creamy, whitey, quite bright cover with the mushrooms, the nature imagery on it. Whereas the US cover is dark, it is black, and it, although I guess features some of the same imagery with mushrooms, it overall has quite a different vibe with this darker aesthetic. I do think they're both quite pretty. I do think they are both pretty. I do think they both work for the themes of the book and are loyal to the book. However, I do think I prefer the UK cover in this instance. I really like the typography on the UK cover compared to the US cover. I do prefer, I think, the brighter, whiter aesthetic. It draws me in a bit more to the book, whereas the darker cover, it doesn't excite me, I don't think. I think it would blend in with other books on the shelf, that it doesn't stand out, whereas I do think the brighter cover from the UK side stands out a bit more. And I do really like the way they have positioned the mushrooms on the UK cover. I don't know, they just look like perfectly placed. So the UK wins on this one. On the same release date, there is the Daughters of Izdihar, also on January 10th. This one again I have read, and this one is a Egyptian-inspired fantasy debut, following two female main characters as they enter the sort of suffragette-style movement and try to claim their power and agency within this world and the elemental magic that they both have. So the covers. Again, I do feel like these are quite evenly matched. There's not a clear winner between these two. Like with the first one, these went for the similar colour scheme of blues and oranges, although I'd say quite different styles. They both give me the Egyptian feel, which is present within the book. And so I would say that they're both successful in that sense, although I do think that the UK cover captures more of that Egyptian feel than the US one. The US one, the city scene isn't necessarily Egyptian. It actually weirdly reminds me of that picture that you get. I've got one of myself there at Brooklyn Bridge weirdly, I just feel like the structuring of it looks like that. But I do think it's probably realistic in that you can sort of see the elemental magic that is being displayed by the character at the forefront of the picture. But I do think I will give it to the UK for this one. I think I prefer the typography. The title and the author's name is much clearer on the UK title, whereas on the US one it sort of blends in a little bit and it becomes a little bit hard to read. So I think on this one I will give it to the UK one again. Then on the 24th of January there is Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim. This is again the start of a trilogy, the first book in an epic fantasy series set in an Arabian-inspired land. Raised to protect her nation from the monsters lurking in the sands, 17-year-old Imani must fight to find her brother, whose betrayal is now their greatest threat. This one I feel has quite a clear winner, at least for me, and that is the UK. I do have faults, I think, with the UK cover. It is not perfect for me, I don't think, but it is much better than the US one. The US one is just a person with their hands like this and the title over the top. It potentially shows that there's going to be some magic because you can see that within her hands, and you can see the Arabian inspired setting in the clothing. But I do think the UK cover is much more appealing with the more artistic flair that the designer had gone for. I'm not too sure on, I don't even know what I don't quite like about it. I like the colour scheme with the orange. Potentially it's the typography that they've used that I'm not such a massive fan of, but I do like the sort of the shape that they have. The it's not a pyramid, but like the building type shape that's there, and the design that's all around it. I would personally say that I much prefer the UK cover. I think it gets across the Arabian inspired vibe, so that is not lost on the UK cover. It does make me think that this book is going to be very hot because it looks quite deserty and quite a isolated setting. I do wonder if that is accurate to the book, having not read it, but personally the UK one wins on the aesthetics. Next we have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which comes out on February 14th. A sumptuous Gothic inspired story about a marriage that is unravelled by dark secrets, a friendship cursed to end in tragedy, and the dangers of believing in fairy tales. The breathtaking adult debut from best-selling author Roshani Chokshi. Wow, this is getting lots of high ratings. But based on the cover of this, I'm sorry, once again, I feel like the UK is the winner. US, you are letting the team down this time. The UK is coming out tops. Okay, so the US one, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think if it was compared against something else, then it probably could have won because I mean, as I said, I really do like blue, and it does have a blue theme to it. I do like the colour combination with the blue and the yellow, and although it's got a person on the cover, I do feel like it's quite artistically done, and I like the way that the typography of the title is placed. So I mean, I think it's a nice cover, but I do prefer the UK cover. I mean, again, I like the typography, I like the flowers, I like the placement of the keys. I'm slightly freaked out a little by the faces, but I feel like that would fit with the Gothic vibe, that it's quite dark, that it is quite a like dark cover. The more you look at it, I think from like a distance, I was like, oh, that's really pretty. But now I'm like looking at it more and more, I'm like, this is quite dark. With those faces on the cover, some of them look a bit pained, but yes, with the birds, with the flowers, with the faces, with the positioning of everything, the colour scheme I really like as well. I think it fits the Gothic vibe. I haven't read the book, but based on the short blurb I have read, I think this one fits. So on this one, I would go for the UK. I mean, I do think the US made a good like attempt, but I do think the UK is the winner here. Then on the 28th of February, there is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the start of a new fantasy trilogy by her. We're following an older female, mayhem on the high seas in this tale of pirates and sorcerers, forbidden artifacts and ancient mysteries, in one woman's determined quest to seize a final chance at glory and write her own legend. So the covers for this, clear winner again for me, and this is once again the UK cover. So I do think the US cover gets across the message that it's pirates, it's the seas, it's adventuring. You can see the ship, you can see the tentacles rising up, you can see sort of the map in the background. So I do think it gets that across, but it does not compare to the beauty of the UK cover. It just doesn't. I prefer the colour scheme on the UK cover, and there's nothing wrong with yellow, but it's just not a favourite. It still gets across the setting that it's on the seas, that we do have the waves coming up. Potentially not quite to the same extent as the US cover. This might have gone a little bit more for the aesthetics than for accuracy of plot, but it does have the seas on it. It does have fish, it does have a crab, it does have, I guess, birds in the sky. You sort of can get the navigational feel from it as well, that you're navigating these high seas. You have the map in the background behind the title. I think it's very well done. I mean, chef's kiss to a cover. I mean, I'm very excited anyway for this book because I love S.A. Chakraborty, and all of the books that I've read by her. The David Bad trilogy is a favourite of all time, but I do think that this is an excellent cover, and I'm very excited to read it. And I do think the typography as well is better on the UK cover. It's a little bit boring on the US one, whereas the UK one is quite a nice, it's very aesthetic, that typography. On the 28th of March, A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher is coming out. This is a new release by her, a haunting Southern Gothic. Explores the dark, twisted roots lurking just beneath the veneer of a perfect home and family, and I think we're following this girl as she comes back to her family home, and growing up she believed that this house was perfect, it was cozy, it was warm, and now it is cold, it is sterile, and her parents are frightened within their own home. And our character will go digging for the truth, but some secrets are better left buried. Okay, so we have quite different aesthetics here between the covers. The US cover is quite green, and then you have the image of is it an ostrich? Oh, is that an ostrich? Is that an ostrich? Potentially an ostrich. It looks a little bit like an ostrich, but not quite an ostrich. But it gives you the vibes of a house. You know that it's going to be set in a house, I would expect, and potentially there is more going on there than you would anticipate because of the creature that is in the centre of the cover. The UK cover, I do think it's prettier, but I don't think it is as loyal potentially to the plot of the book. I do definitely think it's prettier. I love the flowers, I love the way that they're being positioned around the cover. I do like the skull at the forefront. I guess it is of a door to a house, and that is the knocker potentially, but you wouldn't really know that this is about a house that had fond memories and is now apparently not so safe, that is a bit more creepy. I don't think I would get that from the cover. Whereas the US one, you do get that it is set in a house. You do get that setting. So I do think the US one is good for that. However, in terms of the aesthetics, I think the UK one is prettier. I do. I like the colour scheme. I like the way it's scented. I just like the flowers. I just like the roses. I do. So again, the UK is winning again. US, what are you doing? Then on the 4th of April, there is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. When two young rival journeys find love through a magical connection, they must face the depths of hell in a war among gods to seal their fate forever. This epic enemies to lovers fantasy novel filled with hope and heartbreak and the unparalleled power of love. Here we are, the US, finally. We're coming out tops. The US one has the aesthetics of not having people on the cover. So the UK one is two people. I mean, potentially it works because it gets across that it is these two people that are rivals, that are in conflict. It looks quite academia-esque, but it is people on a cover, and I'm typically not a fan of having people on my covers. I know that these are artistic impressions of people, but they're still people on the cover, and it's not really doing anything for me. It's not doing anything for me. Whereas the US one, although you really have no idea what it's about, potentially these flowers and this imagery does have meaning within the book. I cannot say, having not read it. Potentially it does have meaning, but I do think the UK one potentially is more loyal, but the US one wins on the aesthetics. It is pretty. I love the blue. Who's surprised here? I love the blue. I do think that the title stands out, the author stands out, whereas on the UK one, it does stand out a little bit, but it sort of does blend in a little bit. I much prefer not having people on my cover. It makes it an easy win. As soon as you put people on a cover, you're putting yourself up for failure. US finally has another win. Then on the 11th of April, Some Desperate Glory comes out by Emily Tesh. So in this, we're following main character Keir, who is trained for the day she can avenge the murder of planet Earth. Raised in a space station alongside the last scraps of humanity, she readies herself to face the wisdom, the all-powerful reality-shaping weapon that gave the Majoda their victory over humanity. A thrillingly told queer space opera about the wreckage of war, the family you find, and who you must become when every choice is stripped from you. I'm not a massive fan really of either of these covers. Not really. So the US one, we've got the female in the centre of the cover sort of going for her power walk with a very sort of bland colour scheme in terms of both her in black and then this sort of orangey tan colour for both the background and for the title. So from a distance the title just blends in, which I don't think is very good. I think if they'd done the title in like a red, that would have looked much more bold and appealing. I mean, red, green, I don't know, some bold colour would have worked a lot better here, because as it is blending in with the background. So that is not really working for me. Again, it's got a human on the cover. Why would you put a human on the cover? You just don't. The UK one I think is quite boring. So it looks as though we've got planets. You can tell that it's a space opera. Potentially you can't really tell what genre of book the US one is going to be. No, you can't. You don't know what you're getting yourself into with the US cover. Whereas the UK one, you do get that it is a sci-fi. You don't know anything about it, but you would get that it's going to be a sci-fi. I mean, I do like blue. I've said it in this video quite a few times. I like the colour blue, okay? But it's not really doing anything for me. It looks a bit bland. It looks a bit boring. It's the battle of the not amazing covers. I'm really sorry, Emily Tesh. You've been a bit shortchanged here, I would say, that you haven't got the best of covers between either your US or your UK one. I will go for the UK as the winner purely because it doesn't have a person on the cover and the main colour is blue, and I really like blue. I do think the title stands out a lot more on the UK one to the US one, purely because they've got that difference in tone. They've got a yellow font compared to a blue background, and you can tell that it's a sci-fi. So that would be my reason for going for the UK, but neither of them are that pretty for a book that does sound really, really interesting. Right, and we're on to our final one, which is Happy Place by Emily Henry, which comes out on April 25th. So a couple who broke up months ago make a pact to pretend to still be together for their annual week-long holiday with their best friends in this glittering and wise novel by Emily Henry. And I assume it's them coming back together and realising they actually still have feelings for each other. And if anyone can do a second chance romance, it's going to be Emily Henry. So our covers are pretty similar here. They have both gone for the bright pink aesthetic, and I am not opposed to that. I'm happy to see some more pink out there in the book world. So it's very bold, it's very bright. I think it will stand out. Either way, whether you've got the UK or the US one, it is going to make a statement. I feel like both of these, they've gone for the similar vein. You can tell that it's, I would hope, have a pool setting at some point. I mean, based on the blurb, you know that these people are going on holiday. I really hope they're going to a hot, warm country and they're going to have some pool time on their holiday, because if they end up going to the mountains and go skiing, then that is definitely not the aesthetic they have gone for the cover, and that would just be lying to us. This one, I think, is a close call. I'm pretty evenly split between the two. I don't think there is necessarily a clear winner between the UK and the US, but they are quite similar. I do quite like that you have the pink and the blue on the UK one, but I think I prefer the US typography. I'm not a massive fan of the UK typography. It doesn't really do anything for me. It's a very, very bland typography on the UK cover. It really is. Maybe just based purely on the typography, I will say that US wins. But once again, I think that these ones are very, very even and there isn't necessarily a clear winner. But for this one, I will go for the US. So there we go. There are 10 UK versus US book covers for the first half of 2023. I don't actually have any for May and June. I hunted far and wide to try and spread this out to get some May and June book releases with different covers, but the ones that I found for May and June either had the same cover or I couldn't really find any that I was super interested in as yet. Potentially they haven't had as much buzz yet, so that's why things have been a little bit quiet for them. But for now, I've just got January through April releases, and maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens when we get to May and June, if some more covers end up having some differences between the UK and the US, or if for those 2 months the UK and the US are aligned. So let me know if you agreed with any of my opinions or you disagreed with them. If you are interested in any of these books, then I do have a Blackwell's affiliate link down below. Blackwell's is a UK-based independent bookstore which does ship internationally for free. So I would recommend them. They're from my local town anyway growing up, and it is a lovely bookshop, so I would recommend it even if it wasn't an affiliate link. If you are after any of these covers, then I would recommend using Blackwell's, although the shipping might take a little bit longer than if you're buying them off Amazon. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!